to Series 2, Episode 8 of the UK Thrashers radio show. Today we are interviewing Cryptic Shift. Before that, let's kick off with some music. This is Bludvera and Powerhouse. Liverpool's Bludvera. Okay, all the tracks tonight have been chosen by Cryptic Shift. They're our interviewed band of the week. Before we get into their interview, here's Vektor and Black Future. Okay, this week's interview is with Cryptic Shift. It's quite a long one, so I'm going to be stopping halfway through for a little break, a musical interlude. In that gap, there will be some Voivod and Brain Scan. Let's get into that interview. Okay, today we welcome Cryptic Shift to the virtual studio. Guys, please introduce yourself, where you're from and what you do in the band.
Hi, my name's Xander. I'm from Leeds and I play guitar and do vocals.
And this is Ryan, who is also from Leeds. We're pretty much the dynamic Leeds duo of the band. I play drums in Cryptic Shift.
Okay, cool. So who else have we got? Who else is in the band? Who are the missing members? Give them a shout out now so they don't get forgotten.
John Riley, he's on bass. He hails from Liverpool. And if you had him on this interview, you probably won't be able to understand his accent. And then we've got Joss Farrington on guitars, who's just recently joined from Bristol. So we're a little bit spread out now across the UK. Okay,
so for people that haven't heard your music, describe your sound. What are you all about?
Well, currently we like to describe ourselves as phenomenal technological astro death, which...
That's not technological either, it's technological. That needs to be paved out. It sounds like it should be technological, but we're a little bit weirder than that, so technological. But astro death is kind of where it goes from there, which is basically just a strand of cosmic death metal, but there's a little bit more, I guess, personalization to the stuff we do. Yeah. Just meaning that there's a lot of bands that kind of just get brought into the whole cosmic death genre just through having I don't even know, just sci-fi theme.
Maybe a sci-fi intro track, but I think we encompass everything really. We're obsessed with a lot of sci-fi stuff. We want to bring that whole atmosphere into the music and a whole general idea and how we think. Okay, so sometimes with a bit of kind of synth and a bit of kind of strange atmospherics, a lot of other bands just get dragged into that kind of genre just by association, really.
Yeah, I think it's that genre kind of comes from just the whole idea of these guys play extreme music and sing about space. Not even on the level of which Nocturnus kind of incorporated sci-fi into their songwriting, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The instrumentals and stuff, like you mentioned, with the synth work and stuff like that. So I guess that's kind of what we're trying to say suggest with the differentiation from the astro death term. It's more that the songwriting aspect is somewhat of a genre of its own. We're not trying to kind of follow any guidelines that are already out there. It's kind of we're experimenting with this thing, but whilst it's still sci-fi and extreme music, we don't want to necessarily be associated in that not generic, because all the bands are awesome, but that kind of grouping. Obviously a lot of people will just say it's cosmic death anyway, and that's totally fine, but we kind of want to represent ourselves a little bit different to that.
Yeah, and just stretch that pigeonhole a bit. Sorry, Zan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and to expand that to a more musical thing, it's core, it's a blend of death and thrash, and it's probably leaning much more towards death metal, but all four of us in the band, we're all thrashers at heart, and we probably dig thrash much more overall, but we generally play more of a death metal thing, and it's just incorporating all the weirdness and sci-fi within that.
Okay. So how did you kind of end up in that style? How, what have you been through other bands that have kind of gradually moved you that way, or is it something you set out to do from day one? What's the kind of history that's got you into this kind of unique genre?
Me and Xander kind of formed the band on the whole premise of doing some. We were originally playing bands together that were just kind of your average bunch of kids playing metal, So it wasn't necessarily any kind of genre defined thing, but then when we started getting more into like the thrash metal scene and stuff, like we basically sat down and said like, let's do a band that sounds like Sepultura Beneath the Remains. And from there, just started writing tracks. Like that's why the first release we did had that Sepultura Arise cover on it. Just because we started kind of like jamming that stuff and like experimenting in that kind of direction musically. And then I guess this was probably around the time when Vektor were becoming a bit more popular. So we were kind of getting into that side of things, and like Vektor and Voivod were kind of becoming newer bands to us because we were still kind of digging deeper into the thrash metal genre and stuff.
Yeah, I'd say we're all kind of in the shallow waters of the general, you know, like your progression in what you listen to in music. And yeah, we were discovering stuff like Voivod and Vektor and Nocturnus, and you know, seeing these bands do like the thing they do, like the technicality and the proggy elements and the sci-fi stuff. It's like, whoa, you know, this is the thing. You can do this. You can put all this cool sci-fi shit into music, and I think that really inspired us.
Yeah, because like my and Xander's like friendship kind of like at its core was based around like obviously like heavy metal, because we met through playing music, but then we both like really fucking love Star Wars, man. So finding these bands that were like sci-fi and stuff were like, it was a complete no-brainer, because this was kind of like the first time we'd decided that we were going to somewhat not follow a formula, but have some sort of formula in which we were going to like direct ourselves in. So it was kind of like, right, we're going to, you know, come up with, we're now like in control of which way the lyrics go, which way even the, you know, the band's represented and stuff like that, because soon enough we changed the logo and it was to make it really sci-fi, and that was always the like vibe. And then from the first EP, Beyond the Celestial Realms, that was a, you know, as soon as the artwork, oh, it's got to be like, you know, some distant planet in space. It's not got to be anything to do with Earth. You know, we kind of like wanted to go straight in that sci-fi direction, and I think that just became, because I don't want to speak for you, Xander, but like writing music that's outside of the whole sci-fi thing, I don't know how inspired you are with doing that, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Like writing sci-fi music, I think.
Especially like lyrics and concepts and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, I think it just goes hand in hand with thinking outside the box and creating weird noises and, you know, unworldly sounds. It just go hand in hand. Yeah,
it's like way more like open for being a bit more experimental and stuff like that, really.
No, I guess having that sci-fi theme gives you that excuse to experiment a bit more. You know, you aren't so constrained that you've got to, you know, sing about world politics or Satan or, you know, and anything else. You can push it as far as you want, because you've kind of unbound yourself by not having to. Exactly,
man. Like, because that's the thing. Like when I was saying about when it came to like writing stuff and having some sort of theme around the band, you know, a lot of people. There's not many bands that kind of have records that every song's about something different. You know, maybe like Testament on newer stuff where they can do whatever they want, really, you know. But like a lot of people kind of, when they're developing as an artist, like find something that's not their niche, but this is what they feel comfortable doing, and then they get like consistent with doing that. But like regarding like talking about like politics or Satan and other stuff like that, like me and Xander, I don't even think me and Xander have ever had a conversation about politics together. It's like sci-fi.
It's
so
just irrelevant, man. It's just irrelevant.
Yeah. Like that stuff, I don't know, like, you know, reading Voivod lyrics, and it's just like, holy shit, you know, the Killing Technology record, the Dimension H-Ross, there's so many like layers beyond what is coming across like in the audio, you know. And that was like super inspirational, like when we were getting together and jamming this stuff out. I think that's kind of what inspired us a bit more than just being, you know, not to be like just another thrash band, but, you know, there's a lot of bands out there that can kind of just play the A to B thrash stuff, and that's great. It sounds awesome. There's a lot of great bands doing that right now, but we kind of wanted to not be just another band like that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, sure.
Just for his own sakes, like being musicians and stuff like that. Because obviously, as well, we were still like pretty young, so we were developing as artists ourselves. And it was like, do we kind of just stay at this level of staying in like playing 4/4 thrash beats, and a lot of that kind of stuff is incorporated in the stuff we do, especially now. But at least when it came, we wanted to push ourselves and push each other. So pushing that kind of technical edge that comes with this like stuff, songwriting, and like especially Voivod kind of stuff. That's kind of the way we wanted to go with it, to be honest.
Okay, so I kind of jotted down on my pre-questions that space realms is the key theme. You've kind of answered, really. It is literally musical science fiction. I guess that's what you've gone for. There's no metaphorical meaning, or you're not covering up a story with you are pure and simply, or not simply as the case may be, a science fiction band.
Yeah, I like to see it as it's got more in common with sci-fi films than maybe other sci-fi bands or stuff like that. It's more of a story. I just relate it to something like old sci-fi films.
Yeah, and it's got that, not B movie in a negative connotation, but it's got that B movie sci-fi sort of telling the tale, and crazy, what I mean, that slightly trippy. It's got that side. It's got that whole element to it.
Yeah, it's like a really cool film. You'll just get engrossed in. Like you go in the cinema and you'll just believe you're in that world. And you're just all encompassed in it. And then when you walk out the cinema, you just think to yourself like, "Oh damn! I wish I was a starfighter driving that ship in this film." And then you have to go back to your life. So it's really about. You said about if there's anything metaphorical, really, and from my point of view, watching films and that, I always just loved the chases, and like for example, Star Wars Episode 1. I saw that at a young age, and that's probably really stuck with me, like the pod race, the space battles and stuff like that. And it's kind of like about that escape, I guess. Yeah. There's no underlying political things or anything, I wouldn't say.
And I kind of think you hear that in the music. You hear when you're going into hyperspace, and you hear when you're I guess it's not a concept album out and out, but the whole, bearing in mind one of the tracks is 25 odd minutes long, it's really the whole album's a story in parts, I guess, isn't it? Just different elements. Is that right, or is it kind of, are they all 3 standalone or 4 standalone songs?
Yeah, it's all one big story, and the story in particular started our 2017 single Cosmic Dreams. That was kind of like the introduction to the story, and I wouldn't call it a concept record, really. It's more of a story record. A concept kind of has like an underlying metaphorical meaning, and maybe every track's different and relates to this one thing. It's a story record, I'd say.
Yeah. Okay. So you recently, I think it was May, Visitations came out. How's it been received? What's the feedback been like, from press and blogs and stuff, as well as kind of fan feedback?
It's been like real sweet, to be honest. It's like we put a lot of time into putting the record together and recording it, and which was like maybe from start to finish, we're looking at like maybe 3.5 years. But at least from the studio perspective, we were in there for about 1.5 years, which was kind of cool because we weren't in any rush to release it, at least. Just because, like, I know there's a lot of bands out there that just want to put out material and put out loads of material and stuff like that, and that's awesome. But we were kind of like, this is the first record, and we've put so much time and effort into writing this stuff. We want to make sure that the recording is, well, at least we're happy with it. And maybe, that kind of came round and bit us in the arse a little bit, just because we spent so much time in there, but not being able to kind of settle to some extent. But it eventually got to the point where we were like, yeah, this is great. Like, I don't think you can get any better than this.
One
And
phrase
then-
that's always stuck with us, I'd say, Ryan, is we always said you can only do one debut album.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
That was a really like heavy statement that stuck with us, and I think made us persevere and hold out for quite a while so that we could make the album.
One thing that's kind of like always driven us, and I think one thing that's like really heightened that whole idea that we believe that, you know, you can only put out one debut album, it's got to be the best representation possible. Just when, like, you know, just after the first EP had come out, we were given like really good like support slots, and we were really young and still kind of like engrossed in the whole idea of performing as a band and stuff like that. And we were supporting like Exodus and like Sacred Reich, and we got to play a couple of shows with Vektor. We played a few shows with Voivod. So it was kind of like that whole dream, you know, the whole idea of kind of like putting a record out and then getting known fan base worldwide and then continuing on from there, you know, getting on tour packages and stuff like that. It's kind of always been something that it's kind of been like, you know, the carrot on a stake in front of the horse, like kind of always been there, the light at the end of the tunnel. So we've kind of always seen that as been the overall goal for releasing this first album, kind of getting to the point where it was like, it's got to be out on a label that's going to give it really good service, really good distribution. The press campaign for it has got to be fantastic. It's got to, you know, it's got to reach out there worldwide, which thankfully it has done, and that's awesome. But there are a lot of bands out there. I've kind of found that, you know, when speaking to like other bands and stuff, a lot of people are under the impression of, oh, you know, that'll never happen to us, we're just a really small band and stuff. And I think that's kind of like a really limited belief to have. But we've never really endorsed that belief at all. We've kind of always been like, no, let's grab whatever we can take, like, and that's kind of driven us to the point where we could spend a year and a half in the studio and not really care about. We've not put out music for, what was it, maybe 2 years, 3 years, because it was like, when this record does come out, it's going to be perfect. We got on with Blood Harvest, who was the best offer for us that we got. Obviously, it's great for a worldwide non-label to kind of pick a small band, because the thing is with UK bands as well, it's a really small island in the world, so, and there's not a lot of bands coming out of here, at least in extreme metal, that really represent that, oh yeah, the UK is a great place for music anymore. Like, obviously, thinking back to like the earache days, perfect, you know. A lot of great bands came out from the UK, but nowadays not a lot of people seem to take chance, at least international labels, on the smaller UK bands. So we were kind of like, yeah, awesome. We were fans of Blood Harvest to begin with, so it was like, great, we really want to work with this label. And we said, you know, that please make sure that the record gets good service in the press, because there's a lot to say about this record. It's not just, here's Cryptic Shift with the thrash metal record. It's like, here's Cryptic Shift with Visitation from Zelda, the concept story, with there's all the layers to it, and we have a lot to talk about when it comes to interviews and stuff like that. So the record was basically marketed really well.
Went great with in Metal Hammer magazine, which is just ridiculous, isn't it? You know, like thinking Dom back Lawson, to when we,
Dom Lawson loves the record, and I used to read Dom Lawson's reviews in Metal Hammer when I was in high school and been like, oh, you know, I really give a shit about what Dom Lawson thinks about this record, and now he really fucking likes our record, and that's awesome. Like, you can't ask for anything better, to be honest, at least in the UK. But then, like, we're doing interviews in like Japan and stuff like that, and it's like, it's just really nice that the record's been put in these places and people really care about it, want to speak to us, and, you know, it's awesome. So
yeah, I was to say, do you think that is because it's not politics and it's not Satan and it's not, you know, all the domestic sort of stuff? Do you think that the fact it's a little bit more outer worldy that makes that more it makes it more kind of approachable to people whose, you know, English isn't the first language and things like that?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. I think that we might have. There's a lot of weird bands out there that sing like weird stuff and are just like crazy musically and stay like super underground. So but it's really cool to see that like and other bands, especially over the last couple of years, like weirder bands and more sci-fi bands have popped up and getting more attention. So, and it's really cool that we've kind of hopped on that and are getting that recognition in this kind of like weird sort of music, weird themes, and I think it must be compelling for a lot of people to hear something a bit weirder.
Yeah,
and like that kind of comes back to sorry, Neil. I was just going to say that like it comes back to just that we kind of knew that there was a lot of value in the record, so we were willing to sit on it because it wasn't just a death thrash release. It was there was so much to it that we knew that regardless of when it came out, the level of appreciation for it would always be there, and that's like great because basically like coming back to when I said there's not a lot of bands in the UK who get the recognition they deserve now from the international labels. I'd like to hope that we can kind of reset a standard to some extent, at least from bands that we're friends with and stuff like that. You can accomplish this yourself if you just put the work in and really believe in what you're doing.
Yeah. In regards to the reception, I really think that everything we put in, we've got back.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really, I think we're all really proud of the record.
No, definitely. And so how far down the recording process did Blood Harvest get involved? Have they been waiting for you for 2 years, or was that kind of coming towards at least when you knew you had an end in sight?
We sent him basically we'd sent like there was a few labels that we'd been in touch. Yeah, there was a few labels that we'd kind of. There was a couple of stages along because there was one point where we thought the record was finished, and then I went back in and redid my drums and stuff because we'd been playing the stuff for like a year and stuff like that, so I knew my parts a lot better. So there was a lot of like to and from with a lot of labels, but with Blood Harvest, we just sent him the final like masters and all the artwork and stuff like that, and which was good because obviously then we could kind of show that there was a lot more than the music to the record.
Yeah, it was a complete package rather than just that musical piece. But you said you had an idea about what you wanted it to represent and how you wanted it to look as it hit the shelves.
Yeah, absolutely. We had the artwork done, I think, maybe even before we started.
Way before recording. Yeah.
And that's just because, like,
I remember we were at a friend's house in London at the start of 17 or sometime in 2017. But I remember the artist sent over an email with like the first art piece, and I remember like was all looking at it and being like, oh nice. But that was way before even we finished the songs, I think.
Yeah, which is good because like that's kind of how we structured the songwriting. Like the storytelling aspect of the record was probably finished before the lyrics and the music was written.
Okay, so have you kind of a bit cheap? Have you got in your minds? Have you got like a novel? The art, the cover art, the novel that then creates the music. Is that how you work? Is that is that more of a? Is that kind of how it builds up, and then you build the music on top of that, or is it kind of a bit more of a blend of that? As you come up, traditionally come up with riffs and then work out how to weave them into the tale.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's the first time we've worked this way, really, with the story first. But I think it's going to how we're going to work from now on. And but there was a story at the start. It started with the story, and the story was like had an overall like skeleton, an idea how it would go, and then the music and lyrics sort of built up around it.
Yeah, like the music kind of like is like representing, which is something that's like real cool when it came to like the songwriting and stuff. Like because obviously Xander orchestrated a lot of the songwriting process, so there'd be certain sections where it's like, oh, this part is where the guy is drifting through space. He's like kind of unconscious in some sort of like escape pod. So this is what we're going to try and represent with the music. And that's like super cool for me to be involved with you know, rather than just like coming up with something and being like, all right, we've figured this part out. It's kind of like, this is what we're going for. Like, it's cool for me to be somewhat of an outsider inside the band, but to be kind of like working with that kind of, like, you know, like working to a brief, kind of similar to what you'd expect, like
a producer,
a graphic designer to be given, or a producer and stuff. Yeah, and that's like totally awesome, because it makes what I'm doing way more exciting and like motivating, you know.
Yeah, it does sound more like, you know, you touched on it before. It sounds more like making a movie. You had a storyboard, and you want to, you know, as you say, you want to. This is escaping. This is the pod. This is the, and you kind of you build the sound around that, and it makes for a completely different song approach. Is it the structures to your songs are, you know, part crazy, part genius, I think, aren't they? You know, it kind of just
absolutely, man.
Yeah. Sorry, Zan.
And that's. But to add to just that, you just mentioned it's, you know, on top of the story aspect and right into that, it's a lot of music theory and it all linking together like a jigsaw. All makes sense in the end with like repeating motifs and stuff like that. And then with regard to like when we're practicing the material and stuff and saying, oh, this section is when the character's in this facility on a old moon base and he's getting chased by these creatures that are like irradiated, you know, and telling the story and say, imagine this in your head, picture it, and then, all right, let's jam this part. And I think it makes it much more meaningful, and you can just put more soul into it and power when you're playing. I agree. It's a very powerful piece of work, and you know, I touched on it earlier on, but you know, there's a 25 and 35 second track or something on the album, which is you know, a lot of bands are scared shitless about putting out anything that's over 6 minutes. Was that a gamble, or was kind of that always part of that vision, is just you that, you know, monumentally orchestrated piece of work? As mentioned, it began with the story, and the opening track of the album, Moonbelt Immolator, was the first bit of story that came about years ago, and it just started off as, you know, someone waking up in a ship. You know, there's like a few like basic like dynamic story elements and ups and downs, and you know, then he comes across this moon with like a facility on, he crash lands, and then inside the moon he finds some creatures, and then he finds his escape pod, and he goes down to the planet and then meets this ancient being, and it started with that. And as riffs came about and as lyrics came about, it just grew and grew and grew, and it's like, well, you know, this is the story, this is how long the song is, because it's going to follow the story. And as it just went along, it was going to be a long song, I think. Maybe we thought it might be over 12, maybe 15 minutes, but you know, you just, as it got composed more and more, it, you know, it just ended up being that long, and we were like, cool, well, it's not like weird, we just thought of it as, oh, well, yeah, that's the song.
Thing is,
and you know, that's the first thing that happens in the story, so it's going to be track one. And
there was always going to be a split between people really liking it for it being 25 minutes long, and people been like, you know, because when we were first like saying to people like, oh, how's the record coming along? Oh, it's awesome, the first track's like 25 minutes long. Like, it originally started being like, oh, the first track's like 18 minutes long, and people would be like, oh, that's awesome. But we always kind of knew that there'd be some people who maybe didn't have the appreciation or the attention span with music to kind of sit down and take a 25-minute long song for what it is.
Yeah, and that's always, you know, always a risk, especially especially as you get back to the more core thrash community, where 3.5 minutes is, you know, let's put 15 3.5-minute tracks on an album and we're good, you know, that. And for somebody to say, go and listen to the 25-minute track, I guess it pushes some people out of their comfort zone, which is a fucking good thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely what we were wanting to do as well, to be honest, because like there was some sort of, not concern, but the whole kind of ethos around that was like, yeah, some people are not gonna like it, and good, because if they don't want to like it, like, that it's not for them. So what can we do about it, you know? But yeah, I think that track, go on, Zan.
The reason it worked so well, I think, is because we didn't make a big deal out of it. It was just this is the song. That's how it goes, you know.
Yeah.
And that's that.
Because we weren't like, oh, you know, look at us, we've wrote this 25-minute long song. It was just kind of like, nah, it's just how the song is. Like, it's in 6 parts. And I'm pretty sure that, like, 2 of those parts are more or less, like, 4-minute long thrash metal songs.
Yeah.
But it was like, do we, you know, there was one moment where it was like, do we represent it as 6 tracks? But then it was like, no, because the track repeats itself at the end, which concludes that part of the section. Well, the section of the record, the first track. So it was like, no, it is one song, it's one track. It's in 6 parts, but there's plenty of songs already out there that are like maybe 15 minutes long that have got 3 parts to them, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
And splitting it into 6 parts was just to do with the lyrics and like the areas the character goes through, I think. Yeah. And even still, I think, you know, I think you could even split it up into 8 or 9 sections, really. But like splitting it into 6 like lyrical sections was, you know, I think it looks like really cool on the track listing when it looks like a classical like piece, you know, when it's got movements and things.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what it kind of reminds me of. Although, you know, it, as you say, it is a long song. It is more a, you know, in that form, that is the concept. It's the whole story in one tale, or a big part of the story. You know, it's you know, Star Wars: A New Hope in a single bound. You're not going to you're not going to stop halfway through and, you know, go for a popcorn break or something. It needs to be played in its entirety, and but you hear those transitions. As you say, you hear the more ethereal stuff, and then the faster pace when you're, you know, I can hear the Thrashers in there. That, you know, obviously that's where, you know, the escapes and you know, when the drama picks up again before it, you know. So yeah, I completely get that.
Children waiting to catch the stranger notions of that place. Now their evolutions, their brain mutations. The water is the comprehension, the deeper and stronger is the illusion. There's no more material, since they're invisible. Break. searching in our memories, knowing what's inside of me, inside of me, inside of me, inside of me. Persevere, anxiety, erosion, synergy.
Have you played that? Have you played it live yet?
We've played it live like a couple of times, but only like a handful of times in like its complete form.
Right.
Maybe even.
Yeah, in 2018, less, we played it in 2018 a bunch of times.
But that wasn't complete.
Band,
that was like eight minutes long.
We missed out
18
like
minutes long. Sorry.
We missed out a few parts of it live. Yeah.
Oh, so
because they weren't like complete and stuff.
The abridged version.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, any plans? You know, obviously COVID's fucked everything up, but would you like to go and kind of put it out in its entirety?
Absolutely, man. That's the plan. Like as soon as we can play shows again, we want to kind of give the record the treatment that it should have got. By now we'd probably be at least touring. The record, I'd imagine. So, but obviously we can't do that. So when shows come about again, I reckon the first good handful of gigs are gonna be headline shows, playing it in its entirety and stuff like that. Like thankfully we've been able to kind of build up like as following across the UK and stuff. So we'll be able to go to Scotland and then play in London, Manchester, Leeds, York, like all over the place doing like headline stuff. And it's kind of cool because I know a lot of people are kicking themselves in the shin because the whole lockdown has fucked everything up. But for us, it's like, who'd have thought releasing a record, everyone would be sat at home listening to new music. So there's obviously a lot of anticipation, not just for us, but for fans and stuff like that, and especially new fans, because we have gained a lot of new fans from this release, which is awesome. Obviously that's obvious, but it's going to be nice to kind of get out there and play the record in full. I don't know if people, because obviously a lot of people who've only just found the band probably don't know that we've already performed the Moonbelt before, so maybe they think, it's a 25-minute long song, they probably can't play it live or something like that. But yeah, our plans are kind of just to play the record in its entirety and stuff like that. And then when it comes to only having limited time to perform, let's say like half an hour, then there's no reason why we wouldn't play it,
Yeah, a couple of shows we've already kind of walked on stage and, this is the last song, really.
Yeah.
Played like Cosmic Dreams
Yeah.
and Moonbelt. You know, that's 30 minutes. So
Yeah, is that more difficult
Good.
when you're in a support slot? Obviously, because I think all your songs are reasonably long, aren't they? What's the shortest track you've got?
6 minutes.
Yeah. So is that sometimes a challenge that when you're in a support lot, you know, you kind of like, shit, how are we going to condense what we want to say and tell the whole story in that limited period of time, or can you kind of rework your set to make that to make that work?
Thankfully, like, we can either play Cosmic Dreams, which is actually like
F5.
Cosmic Dreams is like a little chapter before Visitations from Enceladus, if that makes sense, in like the whole concept around it and stuff like that, because basically at the end of that track is the start of Moonbelt Immolator, if that makes sense.
Okay, so it's like a little
there's like sound samples at the end of that.
Yeah. So the plan for the half an hour would probably just be to kind of, we can either play that track with Moonbelt or that track with the other 3 songs on the record. So it's kind of like, do we want to play side A or side B, basically, which is quite good because we can get, you know, at least half of the record performed live and stuff like that. But I think that'll just probably just depend on the energy of the show, you know, because there's certain times where those 3 other tracks on the record appear, you know, everyone can have a good time, and if people are already moving and there's a pit going on and stuff like that, then sweet, everyone will be slamming, you know, it'll be sweet. But for Moonbelt, it's kind of one of those for the kind of like performance nerds who kind of want to sit and watch a band play a 6-minute long clean section, you know?
Yeah.
So it kind of will just depend on what's going on at the show, I guess.
I knew you.
And I guess who we're playing with and stuff like that.
I was going to say, if you're supporting an out Thrasher, that maybe a 25-minute kind of extreme prog masterpiece is not the time to dust it off.
Yes, we've walked on stage sometimes and gone, we're doing Moonbelt? Nah, let's do the 3 today.
Yeah, look at this lot out here. They're going to appreciate that. Yeah. We've touched on it as we've been chatting, but who musically kind of are your influences? Where, you know, what's the, you know, a couple of people, when I've been chatting to people saying that I was going to, you know, do an interview with you, and I've been kind of kicking out, what do you want to know from these guys? And, you know, there was people talking about, you know, kind of Yes, and then obviously all the things we've spoken about, Vektor, Nocturnus, all those things all got thrown into there. Is that it? You know, is that where you come from, or is it, you know, is it more than that? And is it things that people might not expect that you're fans of and have taken, you know, taken a bit of a kind of an impact and an influence from?
The John Williams Orchestra from all the Star Wars soundtracks. That's definitely one. That's probably really obvious, but probably not. It's not a metal band, right? So, I mean, some of those tracks are pretty menacing anyway, but...
Yeah, and even Gustav Holst, you know, he does his planets opus, and he goes through each of the planets and plays like a theme about them, and that's like something that John Williams is really influenced by. So, you know, those are like eerie and sinister, and then triumphant parts, and, you know, it goes through all these themes and motifs as like a story.
Yeah, and like John's the one who's like really into like the prog stuff, prog rock. Me and Xander have kind of not really even scratched the surface with that kind of stuff, to be honest. Not that.
Yeah.
It's
a lot of people
like, it's kind of like, because there's so much of it, it's like, I don't even know where to start with this. And we kind of appreciate that those bands, like, you can't just put a Yes record on and be like, oh, is that it? Like, you really got to give some time to those sort of bands. And that's awesome, because to some extent, I guess, one way to put it is that we're not necessarily, at least me and Xander, are not influenced by that kind of stuff in like a primary source, but the stuff we are influenced by is without a doubt influenced by that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so probably.
You've got it by osmosis rather than as a direct influence.
Yeah, probably.
Sure.
And each of us all probably have our own influences to our own playing and what we add to the music.
There's a record, well, I was going to mention Gorgus Obscura. and how that was pretty influential to at least me and you. Just kind of with the wackiness.
Yeah, the whole mindset that Luke LeMay and the others were in at that point is really inspiring to read about and like watch interviews and like little walkthroughs from back then, because they just like made a conscious decision to, we're not going to use power chords, we're not going to use like the generic thrash slayer beats, we're not going to use tremolo riffs, we're going to purposely avoid them to create something like new, and it was just a really powerful mindset that they were in, and they said, right, we're going to do this, and that was really inspirational. I think Gorgo's Obscura, and a lot of the weirdness probably came from that. For me, a lot of it comes from Vektor, obviously, and Revocation. Vektor is like all the thrash stuff, the really sci-fi stuff, and then I really love Revocation because of all the music theory side of it. And they can just come up with like musical sections that are just, I've never heard anything like them. A lot of bands just stick to pentatonic or blues or the natural minor scale or maybe major. But Revocation just have a way around stuff for transitioning between modes and keys and these sounds and these soundscapes come out of their songs that are just really inspired for me, and that made me want to go down and find a lot about music theory, and that really helped our record. I think like the second track, Hypogean Gaol, is all composed in we're playing E flat, so it's all in D Lydian scale, and the D Lydian scale doesn't have an E flat in it, so you can't play like an open E note, like a lot, it's really common and comfortable to just go jun 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 jun.
I was going to say that E. That's a bass player fucked up then.
yeah.
Not our bass player, though. Yeah.
So that kind of like mixes the like Revocation style music theory nerd stuff with the Gorgo's Obscura kind of mindset, where you want to put a twist on it and say, all right, now I can't play this open note, so I'm going to have to think of a way around playing riffs. And that
sure, and then
like
mashed it
combined,
and mashed in together with your kind of love of sci-fi and Star Wars, and you're just big musical theory sci-fi nerds.
Yeah,
for sure, man.
So
plus, like just a little bit of like jazz as well. We're not like massive into jazz. John is, because it's like the bass playing in jazz is like obviously phenomenal, especially the fretless bass work, but just stuff like Alan Holdsworth and. Yeah, like we're going to probably incorporate a lot of that more in the newer stuff, which will be really fun. But I guess that's another not so obvious choice, just like Alan Holdsworth. Rest in peace. But a lot of his records are like kind of spacey anyway. Just they kind of have that kind of like floating atmosphere to it, where it's nothing too intense, but. Especially like his synth work in like the 80s and stuff like that, that's like ridiculous.
I think I kind of see it as similar to how Revocation immediately create this weird soundscape that you never heard. Like Alan Holdsworth's a completely different genre, but in a similar way, if I listen to stuff like that, it's immediately you're in another world. You're like, whoa, I haven't felt this before,
And kind of that's what good music should really do anyway, isn't it? Sometimes listening about how shit the world is today is not, it doesn't help you. Listen to music. You actually want to get somewhere else. You want music to be fantasy. You want it to take you away from the daily issues.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which relates back to not that we have a message to convey or some connotation you can metaphorically get from us. It's, I think it through the music theory and the sci-fi, it just comes back to getting away from
modern music to some extent.
And keeping your mind on like mundane stuff that's irrelevant. You don't need to concentrate on. And as well, mundane music. I think you can say this as well. Just being inspired by the lack of weird bands that like you find interesting and that can inspire. So through that, the absence of it, I think we were really inspired to push ourselves themselves.
To kind of fill that void a bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So you kind of touched on it. How do you find the UK scene itself at the moment? Are there any bands that are kicking around that make you sit up and take notice? As we kind of talked on earlier, there's a lot of youngsters putting together their first, Metallica-inspired thrash band. But what are you kind of seeing out in the, in your local area, in kind of the scene in general?
For us, I would say that it's getting better. I don't know if that's because over time we've kind of started playing shows that are, like bigger deal shows, like Breaking It London and stuff like that. But to be honest, we've been like playing pretty much nationwide since like 2016 anyway. And I'd like to think that the scene in some areas, it's kind of always been what it is, kind of like, I don't know what to give for an example, but, like Manchester's always good.
Yeah. Like
London's always good and stuff like that. But at least regarding like bands that are now going, like, who are playing, similar shows to us and stuff like that, I think it's getting a lot better. There's a lot of like more unique stuff coming out, maybe that's just because over time we've been introduced to more and more bands and stuff like that, but at least like people kind of our age, in that kind of like mid to late 20s, early 30s kind of feel, where it's a lot of people's like first serious band and stuff like that. There's a lot of really good acts out there. One for us is like Separation, who we've just nicked Joss from. I don't know if you know them, but they're like a really good ripping like death thrash band, and we've been good friends with them for years. They've kind of always inspired us, just because like it's awesome when there's it's not like competition or anything, but it's just like, yeah, we really like those guys and they really like us, and that's like real sweet. It's better than kind of not really knowing too many bands out there and stuff like that. But speaking on like the thrash scene, when me and Xander first started this band, there was up north, there was actually a really good like kind of thrash collective really going on. And I don't know if you remember Full Thrash Assault in Wakefield. I don't know if you ever went to that, Neil.
I never went, but I know the festival. Yeah.
So that was like kind of on its way out when we played like maybe like the second to last one. But I remember at the time we really wanted to play that, and that was cool because that was kind of like that was like maybe the only thing in the UK that like had all the thrash bands together. And then the thrash scene kind of, not at least up north, I reckon down south it was probably alright, but up north it kind of became a little bit non-existent for a little while, but now it's kind of on its way back up, which is sweet. And I think that's kind of like a generation kind of thing.
Yeah, there was definitely like a quiet spell that needed to happen,
because we were like the youngest band in that scene, alongside John had a band called Exiled, and John and Joe, who were in that band, played on Visitation from the Zeldas. Joe's no longer in the band, but John we've had since. And then but speaking of bands out there now, Sawticide are really good. I really like those guys. I know you're onto them, Neil, because they're on that.
They played on the.
They're on your charity CD, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're an awesome band. I want to see them live, but that's cool because those guys have been like fans of Cryptic in London for a little while, and then over time you get to know them a bit more personally, and then it's like, oh shit, you're doing this band, and then it's like, oh, this is awesome, man. I really love everything about that band, like production and songwriting is like awesome for a thrash band, so I'm really happy about that, but I'm looking forward to seeing it. There's also Umberia, who we spoke about before the interview and stuff. They're a really cool band. I haven't yet to see them live, but I checked out their demo they did last year, was it?
Yeah, the Thrashers Gold.
Thrashers Gold, yeah, that's it. And that was awesome. So I'm looking forward, and I follow those guys on like social media and stuff, so I'm looking forward to seeing what they do and stuff like that. But for me personally, I don't know, I guess Xander probably feels somewhat the same, but we're really more familiar with the bands in Scotland, and I know you did the CST compilation CD, right?
Well, I just put it out on my YouTube channel for them. The Ifrian guys and
Tempered and Kingpin are like,
yeah,
we really love those guys, man.
Yeah,
every time we go to Scotland, I don't think we can play without playing with Kingpin and Tempered. It's kind of just mandatory now.
No, I'm a member of the the CST Facebook page, and they're always, when the album came out, you guys were getting lots of reposts and people were sharing lots of stuff, and with lots of we know it's not really thrash, but they're cool guys, and so they. That Scottish scene at the moment is really tight. There's lots of
the scene in
bands.
Scotland's like awesome, man. If you ever get a chance to go like up there to a bigger show, there's an event called Belter Fest, which is always awesome. Stephen from Tempered always puts that together. But that scene's like really cool, man.
It's really cool that they've said they've like gone, yo, we're going to create this thing, CST Thrash, and making it a thing has made it a thing. It's gathered a lot of
it's really good,
fans
man.
of it.
Yeah, I guess
I kind of feel that like the UK, well, I guess England, kind of needs that unity to some extent, like with the grouping, and it's kind of hard because I guess because England's so big, it's kind of spread out, so you kind of know who you know from meeting and playing together, and there's even some bands where you'll play together and you won't even watch them because you'll be outside chatting to someone else or gone for food, so it's kind of like hard to make connections with people and stuff like that, but those guys are really setting a great example, man, of what could be a thing.
Yeah, and what supporting other bands gets you, that mutual support is worth its weight in gold, isn't it? And there's no room for kind of dick waving and trying to fuck each other over, because actually if you work together you can produce some really good things. I think there's little pockets of that around the UK, like the 0161 underground community.
Manchester, right?
They're doing some great stuff. Their showcases that they were running all the time in Bolton. My daughter's up at uni in Manchester, so any excuse I have to go and visit her just happens to be at a weekend when they got a good show on, and caught bands like Riptide and people like that there for their and that's a great experience, is giving bands that exposure. But we, as you say, we're so spread out sometimes. I see so many gigs in London, and it's like, how the fuck am I going to get to that? It's on a Sunday night in the Fighting Cocks, and I'm at work the next morning, and it's like, and it gets harder. Especially, you guys are starting to find out as you get older, people expect more shit from you. You can't just fuck it off and go and do what you want. You've got to,
absolutely, man.
With regards like bands, I think you kind of mentioned it, Ryan, how you used to have to search through the cracks to find like the really cool ones who were like really interesting musically for me, and like Separation is one of my main ones that I've loved. I remember when they played Bloodstock a bunch of years ago, and that was a time when I was just getting into metal really, and I checked them out and was like, whoa, this is insane. And then to be playing with them a couple of years later is really cool, to be part of like that like a community, like a unit.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like it's all about the attitude of the members as well, to some extent. There's a lot of bands out there where they kind of keep themselves to themselves, and they kind of they come across as awkward, to be honest. And it's like, whether or not they make great music doesn't really matter if they're not up for socialising with other bands and stuff like that. So I always find that all the better bands are like really charismatic, and they really can like not market themselves really well, but you kind of you become friends with these people rather than fans and stuff.
Yeah, and I guess that's a challenge with some of these younger bands, who wasn't awkward at 17. It's hard, isn't it? When you haven't got that, you haven't got that total confidence, and there's these 25, 35, 45-year-old big hairy moshers all fucking glaring at you. It's a little bit, I guess it could be a bit intimidating when you're only 17.
Yeah, it's good, man. But like that we were in that spot for quite a few years. But like I said before, I think those opportunities, like, we played with Exodus, and maybe I was 18, and like I think I were 18 actually, and it was just like, wow, like, we've accomplished this, and this is what I want to do, and that like level of confidence that comes with that really helps with moving forward from that, because it was kind of like, okay, this isn't going to be a one-off, so like let's keep going and stuff like that, and that's kind of what, that's why when you said there, when, a bunch of like awkward like 17-year-olds and stuff like that, once they get those opportunities and gather that experience and that confidence that comes with it, they're probably gonna,
hungry for more.
Even maybe, taking themselves more seriously and taking what they're doing in the practice studio more seriously and stuff like that. And it just there's just an abundance of achievement that comes with that and stuff.
And I think that's part of taking younger bands out on the road as well. Is that they learn from the next the generation above them. You're probably a generation above these kids from a band perspective now, and there's another. There's another load of bands, your Onslaughts and your Acid Rains and, Memoriams and, all those sorts of bands are another generation on from you guys. And sometimes I think, it's unfortunate. You don't see as many bands getting taken around the country anymore. You might have a local show, but, the overseas bands come in and they'll just have a local support, or they'll bring someone with them and have a local support. And I think that's a real shame because, you end up sometimes, I can be huge in Manchester, but no one in London's ever heard of me sort of mentality. And that's a real shame. Yeah,
that's like one thing we've kind of had to tackle, and one thing I would encourage, like I speak to the guys in Sawticide, like I mentioned before, and like I'm always saying, like those guys haven't even played live yet, but I'm like saying to him, like, I will get you in touch with people in Scotland. Like, you need to go and play Scotland, because these bands do need to get that chance to kind of just go out there and make friends so they can go back, because that's what we always did. Like, from the Beyond the Celestial Realms record coming out, the EP, like from there, we were in like the smallest car possible. I think the band is cursed with having a list of really small cars. But just packing all the gear and sitting on the back seat with 2 guitars and a bass guitar in between your legs, and the merch box is like,
overflowing,
pulling your neck. It's like pushing against a seatbelt, and you feel like your head's about to be severed. We did that for years, just to kind of like get out there and make these connections and keep going back to places and making friends with people. And then sooner rather than later, people start asking you to come up and instead and stuff like that, and it's really awesome, man.
Ryan, I noticed that as the drummer, you took no responsible for all that kit you've got to carry everywhere. Are you sure that a lot of that wasn't?
No, I was sat. Every time I've ever gone anywhere in a car like that, I'm the one in the band who really needs to use my legs, so I'm going to sit in the passenger shotgun seat with nothing on top of me, and just watching all these dickheads in the back with like gear everywhere, like a sea of gear behind me, man. But yeah, it's funny, man.
Brilliant.
But without those times, I don't know what we'd be doing. I don't know if we'd still only be playing in Leeds every weekend or what,
Yeah, there's a lot to be said for pushing yourself, isn't there? And as you say, making as soon as you can get a driving license, load the car up and go, and push yourself on people a little bit. The other risk is if you only play locally, people get sick of you. You can only play the same pub so many times.
But like you said, man, like no one's taking these small bands out anywhere anymore, which is a shame.
So take yourself out.
Yeah, exactly, because that's what we've had to do, and it works, And then that's when you start being able to kind of play, because, like we've played with a couple of shows with like Voivod in like Leeds, Nottingham and London and stuff like that, just because we've had that association there. So it's just built up over time, and it's good, man. There's no reason why no other band can do it. It's just a matter of, arranging everything and stuff like that.
Yeah, sorting the business out and getting on with it.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Okay, quick fire round.
Sweet.
Top 3 sci-fi films.
Number one's The Phantom Menace, obviously, I think.
Yeah. I'll throw in. Is this between us or separate? Between
you or separate, it's up to you.
All right, we'll go between us, Xander, because we'll be here all day if we have to decide 3 films each. I'll throw in Close Encounters, just because it's extremely real and a great example of what it's like to believe in UFOs.
And the third one?
I'm going to throw in The Fifth Element.
Cool, right.
Luc Besson.
Ideal support slot.
Is it too late to be on opening Clash of the Titans? Can we go back in time?
Do you want to get the DeLorean out? Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be sweet if you've got one. I don't know, man. Probably like playing Japan with Voivod or something. That'd be sweet.
Okay. Voivod or Vektor?
Voivod.
I'm going with Vektor.
Or splitting the band. E.T. or Avatar?
Avatar.
E.T.
Oh, and again.
Oh, man.
I'm a big fan of Avatar, man. That was one of them films that, you know, you walk out of cinema like, whoa, I want to be an Avatar, man.
Space Smurfs.
I'm really into all the modern sci-fi films as well, and like a lot of people are in, like purely into old sci-fi, but you know, I love all the new stuff as well. Avatar, and then that Valerian a couple of years ago, that was sick as
well. Pestilence or Nocturnus?
Nocturnus. I'm going with Nocturnus.
Yeah, me too.
So, any obviously that was a drummer vocalist. You got ideas, Ryan?
There is a band called Sith in the works, but I don't know if anything will happen with that. But that's just me and Xander doing Star Wars related dismal, horrible death metal where I'm going to attempt to do vocals, but it probably won't happen. Just because, you know, I don't want to ruin my vocal cords.
Alien or Predator?
Alien.
Man, that's impossible.
These are like the most time-consuming, quick-fire questions you could have asked.
Oh man, I'm going to say Predator.
Okay, Alien versus Predator, but perfect. Mullets or moustaches?
Mullets.
And the last one, what the fuck is a moon belt in Malator?
Well, that's okay. So in the story, the character finds Earth, and it's been like destroyed thousands of years ago, and in the events that destroyed it, Earth managed to blow up the moon. So Earth's moon is technically like a belt, like an asteroid belt around the Earth, kind of. It's all split up and broken, so therefore it's a moon belt. And in Moonbelt Immolator, the track, the character comes to this moon base on the old like cracked moon, and he has to activate the self-destruct and like blow up the remnants of it, and then he escapes in an escape pod, and thus he sort of becomes the Moonbelt Immolator.
Okay. Final shout-outs, plugs, social media links, anything else you want to get off your chest?
You can find us at the usual places, you know, the internet works. Cryptic Shift.
Go Google
follow
it, you lazy
Blood
bastard.
Harvest as well. Yeah.
What you want to do is you want to put on probably, I don't know, maybe 2001 and turn the sound off. I mean, there's not much sound on the film anyway. Go to like one of the really cool space scenes that probably does last about 25 minutes long, and you know, put Moonbelt on with the headphones in and just enjoy space. It's probably the closest thing we're going to get to space exploration. So yeah, if you want to listen to Moonbelt, don't be like, oh, you know, I've got this bus journey, I'm going to listen to this 25-minute long song. No, you want to sit down in a nice comfy chair, get your favourite drink, and just stare at a screen projecting someone's idea of space.
Go through warp factor.
Yeah. Awesome.
Brilliant. Guys.
And you'll really understand Moonbelt Immolator.
Excellent. Guys, thanks for your time. Really appreciate it. I'll hopefully catch you guys when we finally get to gigging again. I'd love to come and see what you do.
Absolutely.
And yeah, thanks again. Thanks for joining us.
Cheers for having us.
Yeah, man. Cheers. See ya.
And that was Petrified in the Hypogean Jail by Cryptic Shift. Thanks to the lads for coming and have a chat with us. It was a nice long talk. We had a track mid-interview, which was Voivod and Brain Scan. And finally tonight, for one of the bands that was mentioned in that interview, this is Sawticide and this is Buried Alive. Show. Thank you for listening. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for those of you to subscribe who follow us on our social media channels at UK Thrashers. Next week we've got Umberia in the studio, but until then, see you in the pit.